G'day guys, my name is Wildkard and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for following my content, I really do appreciate it. First up, I would like to say to all my South African viewers, hopefully you guys are taking care of yourselves. Please make sure you guys stay safe, and I know you guys can get this thing under control. You have done it before, so stay strong, stay safe. Please look after yourselves. And yeah, thank you for tuning into my videos. And you know what it is? It's Tuesday. It's a news day. Let's take a look at what's been happening in the world of union. So obviously the discovery of new variant let's just call it unicorn variant, so I don't get demonetized or get flagged. It has been set the rugby world into a massive spin. So the URC has seen round 6, which was last weekend, and round 7, which is the next weekend, being postponed. So there was a couple of visiting teams, Cardiff, Munster, Scarlet and Zabri were all in South Africa and they were not able to play essentially, and the tournament has essentially delayed these games and try to get some of these players back home. It's a pretty difficult position for everybody. And also, yeah, as a result of this, the URC is currently trying to move South African derbies forward so that they play during the next maybe 2 or 3 weeks of lockdowns, and then try to reschedule the games that's been cancelled this weekend and the last weekend, essentially the week that just passed. So they're looking at getting the Stormers to host the Lions, and they're looking at getting the Bulls to play the Sharks. So that's the 2 games that's coming up this weekend. So yeah, we're not going to be able to see the international matches, but there will still be rugby played in South Africa amongst the local teams. And there has been some issues with Munster and Cardiff. The players in South Africa in the team were not able, the 2 teams were not able to return home to Europe as a result of the variant, and there were players tested positive, so they were not able to get on the charter flight back into Europe essentially. So the 2 teams are left behind in South Africa. So there's 1 reported case in Munster, and there is 2 cases reported in Cardiff. Yeah, this is a little bit rough. And also, in terms of Heineken Cup, there is no plans to change anything as of reporting yesterday on the 30th of November, or today, depends on which way you're looking at. And the Barbarian matches was the other one that was suffered on the weekend. The Barbarians, led by coach Dave Rennie, was supposed to play the Samoans on the weekend, and this game was cancelled literally hours before the game was supposed to take place at Twickenham, and 90 minutes before, an hour and a half. And there was literally, because 6 confirmed cases inside the Barbarian camp, led to the cancellation, as it wouldn't be safe for them to play against the Samoans, to safely play against the Samoans. It was just too late to make changes. And including 3 Wallabies players that was in the squad tested positive. They have not revealed which Wallabies were infected, but there were 11 Australian players, including the coach Dave Rennie, coaching the Barbarians. So they didn't specifically say who was it that was in. That tested positive, but there were definitely 3 Wallabies there. This was supposed to be Rob Kearney's farewell, essentially, and and then also Joe Tekori's last game. Rob Kearney, one of the big names for Irish rugby. This game was not to happen. Rob Kearney, I think, was supposed to come off the bench, so this is not happening for him. And also Dave Rennie, as a result of criticizing the referee in the Wales vs Wallabies game 2 weeks ago, it's issued a warning by World Rugby, and as a result, Dave Rennie came out, accepted the warning, and issued an apology. No fines, no ban. So Yeah, a lot of you guys were saying Dave Rennie's World Rugby's favorite referee. Maybe you are right. Maybe there is a bias towards the Springbok. But yeah, this is I thought he should at least get a fine. Just a warning and an apology was enough for Dave Rennie to get off the referee critic train. Rob Valentin is handed 2-match ban after the big headshot, kind of like head collision, a high shot, head colliding with Adam Beard, and yes, so Robert Valentin, this one was deserved, that he should have been red card, and this was confirmed in the judiciary afterwards, and he was banned. He's currently banned for 2 weeks. And more coming out of the Welsh game 2 weeks ago, actually. Sir Nigel Owens, the greatest referee of all time, and Welsh, actually agrees with the referee, thinks that the knock-on, the deliberate knock-on, was actually a knock-on, but he does sympathize with the referee on the field, saying that if the referee thinks it's not a knock-on, it's a difficult decision, but from his mind, he thinks it's a knock-on, and yeah, but he does not think that it should be a yellow card, because it's at a position where Australia was not able to essentially score, so it would just be a penalty, which is, I think, the right decision to make. And he also clarified the reasons for the deliberate knockdown. So a lot of everyone, including some of you guys in the comments, including me, myself, thought that deliberate knockdown is actually a penalty. But in the rule book, which I checked as well, the way it's worded, it's deliberate knock-on. So the ball has to go forward for the deliberate knock for it to be a penalty. So if the player technically knocks the ball down, and as long as the ball doesn't go forward, it's actually not a penalty. So as explained by Sir Nigel Owens, there is no rule that says deliberate knockdown is a penalty, but the ball has to go forward for it to be considered deliberate knock-on. And also that he does say that basically the rule does not say you are not allowed to prevent a pass. It just says you're not allowed to knock the ball forward whilst preventing a pass, essentially. So that's basically the clarification from the best referee in the world, Nigel Owens. But yeah, so Nigel Owens did think that it was a knock-on, but not yellow card worthy. And also, Super Rugby has been put in a bit of disarray. There's been a lot of governments being, rushing into putting restrictions to the unicorn, and the New Zealand government has obviously pretty strict on protecting their own citizens. No non-citizen were allowed to enter until April 30th next year. So Super Rugby starts in February. So there's been talks in moving the Super Rugby into Australia for the entire tournament, or at least for the first half of the tournament, for the foreseeable future of the tournament. So a lot of that could happen. We shall see. Maybe players have to live in the bubble for 5-6 months again for Super Rugby tournament. And then Stephen Larkham has come back home to the Brumbies, where he was probably one of the most successful players ever in Brumbies history. He's back as a coach. He was actually working at Munster after being dropped by Michael Checker as assistant coach to the Wallabies, and he actually got offered a 2-year extension at Munster, but he ultimately decided to come back to the Brumbies as an opening has opened up for the Brumbies side. And one of the reasons that he kind of did mention is the fact that his family do still live in Australia, and he doesn't want it to keep travel back and forward whilst working in Munster in Europe. So that's really difficult for his family. Even though he was offered a 2-year extension, he wanted to come back home just to be closer to his family. So that's basically one of the main reasons he decided to leave the Munster offer. And yeah, good to see Larkin back into the Wallabies fold. More news from Australia. World Rugby has basically named Australia as the preferred candidate for hosting the 2027 Rugby World Cup. So Australia's got one hand on Webber's Cup already, as far as I'm concerned. So Yes, so World Rugby has announced that, which is quite good. And they also announced England for the Women's World Cup in 2025. And then they announced USA potentially for the one after at 2031 for the Men's Rugby World Cup. So that's interesting stuff. So good to see that. Good for me that we have one hand on the Webb Ellis Cup. Finally, Bill can come back home to the people who actually love it. So some news from South Africa following the Rassie saga, the Rassie Gay saga, the most talked about man in World Rugby today, the man that brought referees into dispute, the hero of the South African community. He actually came out, apologized to the referee as part of his sanction, and also he decided not to appeal the severe punishment that's handed down to him. I had a video made about this. I thought his punishment was way too much. Considering Dave Rennie, we saw just then, all he had to do is issue an apology. This is Rassie Erasmus' first time infringement against the referee as well. So it's not like he's always been criticizing the referee. This is the first infringement, although it's quite severe. But I didn't think he deserved like almost 9-10 month ban till September 30 next year. I thought maybe a big fine would be sufficient, and maybe like a month or 2 month ban would be more than enough. 10-month ban is quite huge. I have another video going through some of the past precedents that was set in the past on these sort of sanctions that was handed down by World Rugby. So and why I think Rassie's punishment is just way too much. They should, I think he does have a case of appealing to bring it down quite substantially, but he decides not to pursue the appeal. And if you want to see that, the videos in the channel, I might put a thing up here. You can click on that and have a look at that if you want. Next, the Ibn Elizabeth is out for 3 months due to a head concussion protocol. So he was kind of knocked on his head a little bit in one of the tackles against England, and his club has decided that Alun has decided that he's not able to play for 3 months as a precautionary measure for his concussion. So good to see that he is taken care of. Also, a few days ago, the World Rugby has voted to change eligibility rules for rugby players to change their nation after debuting for a country. So as long as so basically this rule was voted. So before the passing of this rule, if you debut for a country, you are not allowed to play another country ever again. And then there was a loophole that was introduced where you can play another country if you played the sevens team in an Olympic year. So like every 4 years, you can switch if you play for the sevens team. So there was some weird loophole there. So just to fix everything up, to tidy everything up, World Rugby voted to just allow players to switch at country after being inactive with their initial debut country for 3 years. So we could see players literally playing for, say, New Zealand in Rugby World Cup 2023, and then go play for, several Rees could potentially go play for Fiji in 2027. So they literally could play 2 different teams, two different World Cups for 2 different nations back to back now. So that's a change. So obvious, and this was passed by 75% of World Rugby, and so the rules are so only way you can change is if your parents or grandparents are born in another country, then you can switch your allegiance. Other than that, you're not able to, just because if all your parents are born in and grandparents are born in New Zealand, even if you are a Fijian, you're still not able to switch. So one of your lineage has to be born in the island nation to be able to switch, essentially, or any nation in that matter. So this is pretty interesting stuff. A lot of Wallaby players, like the Tongan Thor, now can play for Tonga again. And then you have the talks of Israel Folau playing for Tonga in 2023, essentially. So that's a pretty huge name. There's like a list of players that could return to play for Tonga. And also, I think, Charles Piotau is probably the biggest name, one of the biggest names who played for the All Blacks to potentially play for Tonga. I think Israel Folau is probably the biggest name, to be fair, to play Tonga again. So yeah, this is quite a big change. A lot of these other nations has been pretty hard done by, like Tonga is losing all of the games, literally putting, you know, semi-professional players on the field, and whilst having all of these world-class players playing for New Zealand, Australia, and they're not able to play for Tonga because of these rules. So now the rules change. It's really good. Really excited to see how things are going to go for these Islander nations. And it's all good to make the Rugby World Cup more competitive, more prestigious, to win in the Rugby World Cup. And with more exciting games coming up in the future as well for everybody. And then we have the England Rugby Union, Rugby Football Union, which is the England Rugby Union, essentially. They reported a big loss this year. 97 million pound revenue, down from 167 million from previous years. So previous year is 2020, by the way. So they still made a lot more money in 2020 than this year. I think probably because 2020, the Six Nations wasn't affected. The Six Nations were able to carry ahead with full crowd and everything early in the year. And England did quite well in that Six Nations as well, from memory. And then England did pretty well in the Autumn Nations as well. Whilst this year, the England had atrocious Six Nations. And so that probably led to a lot of the losses, while still remaining, you know, whilst also that was played in lockdown, unlike Six Nations previously. So that's probably one of the big reasons. And, you know, let's not go through these boring numbers, but essentially the RFU saying that they're, basically, despite their attempt to cutting the cost, they're still making quite a big loss around this area. And yeah, it's just, and they're cutting a lot of costs they're still not able to cover. They're asking people to like donate their bonds essentially to cover some of their costs. And also they are even though they're actually despite they reducing their cost, they're still not like lost money this year, like suffer huge losses essentially. Like, it's not a good year for Eddie Jones and his boss. And, you know, they're even cutting investments into the professional rugby sport as well, as to try to save money. So things are, you know, had a pretty bad year for England rugby, but things probably will turn around, hopefully, for everyone. And Sir Eddie has talked about why he thinks Maro Itoje is not suited to be England's skipper. So there was a lot of talk about Maro Itoje being such a hard worker, such a great player, will be a great candidate to be England captain, and also some people were calling for him to be the Lions captain. But Eddie Jones basically thinks that Maro Itoje is really like inward kind of person. He keeps to himself a lot, like inward looking. Something that he needs to develop out of his shell, essentially, to be able to actually, you know, consider for the leadership role for a team. So that's interesting to note. And also that Maro Itoje has been taking acting lessons to improve his communication leadership skills with acting. Maybe Maro can become an actor. He will make a pretty, I reckon he'll make a good, like, you know, what roles can he play? Like, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I reckon he'll probably make some good acting, like play like a bad guy or something. I don't know. So yeah, make some acting. And Eddie Jones also talked about how he spends his spare time traveling around coaching other teams to try to refresh himself in his coaching. So he talked about how he was working with Beauden Barrett, how he learned from, in Japan, whilst being criticized by his best friend, Sir Clive Woodward, the greatest coach ever. So Clive Woodward obviously taken every opportunity to criticize his best friend from 2003. His coaching role in Japan makes English rugby look ridiculous. He should be 100% focused on the job and can afford absolute zero distraction. So Eddie Jones is right. In his off-season, he's not actually just like wasting his time. He's going to go and keep honing his skill as a coach, trying to explore opportunities. I'm sure he does not need the money. He's just there to try to learn from some of the best players in the world, try to, you know, get an idea of how the game is played from other parts of the world. So that's basically what Eddie Jones said. He actually worked with Beauden, and he talks about Beauden's drive, how he has that, like, you know, young enthusiasm of an 18-year-old. Shows a lot of passion. A very humble kind of player as well. Some of the really, really good qualities. And yeah, so Beauden, we know that he's been under a lot of pressure in trying to get that number 10 All Black jersey back on his back again. So this is kind of Eddie bit of insight into Beauden as well. Warren Gatland landed another coaching role. He's just getting. There's talks of him replacing Eddie Jones as well after Eddie's done with England in 2023. So he's landed another role where he's coaching the New Zealand Barbarian Rugby Club in New Zealand. So Warren Gatland just taking all the job for himself. Alun Jones from Wales had a bit of a shoulder injury against New Zealand where he tried to tackle Jordie Barrett, and Jordie Barrett apparently made out of titanium steel as Alun Jones hit Jordie with a pretty standard looking tackle, nothing too crazy, popped his shoulder out, and as a result of this, he needed 2 surgeries. So the reports just came out, he just had 1 surgery as a result of this injury, but the doctors thinks that he needs another one that's going to happen in 2 weeks. So his recovery to be playing rugby again could be a very long one. This is looking pretty dire for Alun Jones and his career, to be fair. And then finally, there was actually a little bit of international rugby that was played on the weekend. Russia played Chile on the weekend for the final week of the November Test Series. And Russia losing to Chile. Chile was pretty good all overall. Russia came out, and I actually watched a little bit of the game, not the full game. Russia kind of like tried to score tries instead of taking penalty points, whereas Chile were more realistic with their positions in the field, taking points when they could, and was able to just stay ahead of Russia for most of the game. Let's say halftime score 8 points to 25. Russia had a lot of opportunities where they could kick for 3 points penalties and opted to go for the tries and just failing to do so. So maybe Chile is a very dominant team. They are looking at qualifying in the next year in the Rugby World Cup. So yeah, so this was a pretty big win for Chile over Russia. And finally, Mongolia is a member of World Rugby, and that's interesting. I did not know Mongolia had a team, but all of these lovely ladies will be able to, play rugby for potentially for money. And they basically, Mongolia has a team, like amateur team, and most of the participation in rugby is involved in their military. And now that the game is kind of like developed a bit in Mongolia in some of the 7th circuit and in the Asian Rugby Championship in Division 4. So yeah, the nation signs up essentially as a World Rugby member officially. And this is kind of good for the growth of the sport. And we know Mongolians are pretty good at like wrestling and all that sort of physical sport. So it'll be interesting to see like what kind of physicality the Mongolians are able to bring to the 15-side game, and maybe we can have a future that we can look forward to out of another Asian team out of Asia. So yeah, that's the news for this week, guys. Let me know your thoughts. Please stay safe. Please stay healthy, my Springbok fans. And I know you guys having a tough time, and I know you guys have got this thing under control before, and I believe you guys can do it again. So just I have belief in you guys. You guys are very resilient and very, 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 very strong mentally, and I know you guys can do this. So please stay safe, please stay healthy, and I'll see you guys next week for some more rugby content later this week. Thank you for watching, guys, and see you guys soon.